All right, so picking up where we left off, I did post the answers to Mr. Cilio's worksheet, and I'd imagine there's a little bit of confusion, so let's take a look at how to do some of these problems. So for problem number 1, it asks us to find the cosine of 2x plus the cosine of x is equal to 0. Now we do have 3 different formulas we could use for the cosine of 2x, but because we do have a cosine, I'll make sure that all these are cosines. The formula was 2 times the cosine squared of x minus 1. That's what the formula for this was, one of the 3, plus the cosine of x is equal to 0. Simplifying, we get 2 times the cosine squared of x plus the cosine of x minus 1 equals 0. This is a trinomial which we could factor, and we would get, we talked about how to do this before, 2 times the cosine of x here, 1 and 1. If we have to get positive 2 to start and negative 1 and positive 1 here, so this would have to be positive 2 and then a minus 1. So that would be how you factor it. And then solving this, when is cosine of x? 2 cosine of x minus 1 equals 0. So the question is, when's cosine of x equal to 1/2? That would happen at 60 degrees and at 300 degrees. And we could always add the period also. I do think he asked just for numbers between 0 and 360. It's a little confusing because usually whenever we say x, we want radians. Theta is degrees, so you guys know better than that. It looks like Mr. Cilio's worksheet. If he says between 0 and 360 degrees, it's acceptable to leave the answer like this. Whenever I give you anything, remember that x is always in radians and theta is in degrees. And you guys know that. I'm just reminding you because this worksheet's a little inconsistent. And when is cosine of x negative 1? Well, that's a quadrantal angle. That would happen at 180 degrees. So I'm taking a look here. We'll just go through this for the second problem. It says we have 2 sine of 2x plus cosine of 2x squared is equal to 1. Now, there are a few different ways we could do this. First thing I would do is let's get rid of this square. We know that this would turn into absolute value. And absolute value would give us positive or negative 1. This one's going to be a little bit longer, but we do get plus or minus 1 from here. So I'm going to make it equal to 1 positive 1 and 1 negative 1. And just like in the last problem, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, we have to use the formula. So this would be 2 times the sine of 2x. And then the cosine of 2x, we have some freedom as far as which formula we could use. So it doesn't matter which one we use. Let's see, on the answer sheet, I wrote it as 1 minus 2 sine squared of x. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'll use a different formula now just so you have something to look at. I'm going to use, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to use 2 times the cosine squared of x minus 1. Just so you can see that you could do it in a couple different ways. So I'm going to be doing both simultaneously here. And this one was equal to 1. So I'll go through this and let's see what the answer should be. This is going to be 4 times the sine of x cosine of x plus 2 cosine squared of x. And if you bring this over, this is going to be minus 2 is equal to 0. And at this point, the earbud keeps dropping out of my ear. What I'm going to do is I see that I get a little stuck here because we can't just factor from these and make it equal to 2. So I think it's probably better if we use the 1 minus 2 sine squared. I got into a little bit of a dead end there, but if I use 1 minus 2 sine squared of x, you could see the benefit of that is once you get these terms together, they actually equal 0. And now I could go ahead and factor out a 2 sine of x, and I'm left with 2 cosine of x minus sine of x equals 0. So when is 2 sine of x 0? Or when is sine of x 0? Right here and right here, when x is 0 degrees and when x is 180. Now when is 2 cosine of x minus sine of x equals 0? We saw these kind of problems before. If we bring the sine on the other side, square both sides, let me just check something here. I'm just looking at my notes. 2 sine of 2x. Yep, so that's all right. Everything's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square both sides. This would be 4 times the cosine squared of it. You know what I could do? I could even just divide both sides by cosine. And I get the tangent of x is equal to 2.